Thank you so much for the honor of being with you today and reflecting on your priesthood and our friendship. Our friendship has spanned over half a century.
Yes.
Over half a century. You came into my life in the 60s, and you were a light, a teacher, a friend. And as I prepared for this time with you, I reflected, and I want to share with you the words Saint Teresa of Avila said. She said, Christ has no body now but yours. No hands on earth but yours. No feet on earth but yours. Yours are the hands, yours are the feet. Christ has no body but yours. And the theme of your priesthood and really your life is that you are Jesus. You are Jesus. You were Jesus to me so many times in my life. So thank you for your friendship of over half century. This has been a beautiful opportunity for me to reflect on so many ways that you touched my heart and my soul and influenced me. I want to talk about your love for the Eucharist. You helped me. I remember receiving my first Holy Communion. I've loved God and I loved the Eucharist. But there was a moment when you were to me Father John. But there was a moment at Marywood. We did First Fridays. Do you remember that?
Yes,
First
yes.
Friday at Marywood.
Yeah.
For a long time, my mom and Miriam and Kathy,
Yes.
we would all come. But there's one particular time, and it was perhaps the first Friday of December. Advent was upon us. And I can still remember how you lifted the host. This is my body given for you. And you appeared to transform as I looked at you. And you were so overwhelmed, not with what you were doing, but who you saw when you lifted the host. And you started to sing while still holding us. Oh, come, let us adore him. And we all joined in. And that day, as we went to the banquet, to the altar, that became the song that we sang, Come, let us adore him. And everybody who was there sensed transubstantiation. Is that what the word is? When the
Yes.
host becomes the body, the blood, the soul, the divinity. And you transformed and we were transformed. For those who don't believe in the Eucharist, Monsingor Esseff talked to us about the Eucharist, the gift.
We become him.
Yeah.
And even while you were talking and telling me about your love, there was always something about you that lived that, the goodness, that was there. Thank you.
Thank you. The intimacy of Eucharist. Take him in. It's such an intimate sacrament.
Yeah. At what point do I become him and he becomes me? At what point? We become more and more like him. He becomes more and more like me, and I become more and more like him. We are all meant to be transformed into him. And he wants all of us to be his body. Every single person. So that no matter where you look or wherever you perceive, you see Jesus.
Yes.
Christ as a light, illumine and guide me. Christ as a shield or shadow and cover me. Christ this day be within and about me. Christ the lowly and the meek. Christ the all-powerful be in the heart of each to whom I speak, in the mouth of each who speaks to me, in all who draw near me, or hear me, or see me. I am meant to be him. He is meant to be. I sometimes it's like a little old man who gets frail and tired, and then suddenly I get filled with this strength and newness of life. I'm 95, and it comes. He then enlivens me.
Yes.
Yeah.
I could just feel like not the volume, but the passion.
Yeah.
The passion for Christ in you is you. And you have been Christ to so many. To so many. And you know, Monsignor, I always remember going to confession to you. And I remember the lines at Marywood. People wanted to go to you because it wasn't just coming in with the grocery list of, I missed my prayers 3 days, I told a lie. It was touching our own wounds, our weakness, and going to confession to you was an opportunity for
I
me.
attribute that to Padre Pio. I really do. I feel that sacrament in particular, that he assisted me. He always did. And I remember that was the one sacrament I was most afraid of. And I could preach all the time, but I wasn't very good at confessions. And I remember thinking that the priest's mistakes are in the graveyard. The doctor's mistakes are in the graveyard. The priests are in hell.
Doctor's mistakes are in the graveyard. A priest's mistakes are in hell.
Yeah.
I hear so many people, they'll say, like, why do you Catholics talk about your sins to another man? And even Catholics are not going to confession as we once did. I mean, my mother had us down there every Saturday, and I can still remember one time we came home and we were supposed to go upstairs then and finish cleaning, and we were up there jumping on the beds, and she sent us right back to confessions the same day. Well, you need more grace, and that's the point, the grace that comes from the sacrament. But you said that Padre Pio helped you to be a better priest in the confessional.
Yes.
Okay.
He said to me that whenever you have, because I had some people came to me to confession and confess that they were going to commit suicide, and they went out and committed suicide. And I felt so terrible. Felt terrible. What could I have done? What should I have done? What would someone else have done? And so I was so tortured with that. And I made a trip to see him. And he actually Bible did to see me. Mary Pyle was there the day that he came to see me. And she said he Bible did to see me. And he said to me during that visit that he would, if I would send my guardian angel to you, he would come to me and assist me in the confessional. And ever since that time, I felt that he came and visited with me and helped me with difficult confessions. So and ever since that time, I have never had difficulty with confession.
I'm so glad that you brought up our angels, because as a little girl, we would say, angel of God, my guardian dear. And I knew I had an angel who was guarding me night and day. But I don't know if you remember this. You told us that your guardian angel is there, the Spirit of God for you. And you told us that they have a name. But I remember this. You told us not to pick the name, but to meet our angel.
Yes.
That's what you said.
What is she? What's your name?
My angel's name is Autumn, but do you know what my mom's angel's name is? Mihad. And I said, Mom, where did you ever hear that name, Mihad? And she said, it's what Monsingor Esseff said. You will meet your angel. And I met Mihad. And anyway, we looked up the name. Mihad is the name that can be used for a boy or a girl, and it means a cradle, a place of peace. My mom's angel became her dear friend, her guardian, her place of peace. And I mean, she would, when we were acting up, Mihad, help me, she got to know her angel. I got to know Autumn, my angel, and had affirmation that was who my angel was. And so I don't think we were aware of angels other than Saint Michael the Archangel and Angel of God, my guardian dear. But it's so much more than that.
If you walk into a room and you don't see angels, this room is filled with angels. There are so many spirits that are right here beside your guardian angel. And there are just angelic spirits all over the place. And if you aren't acquainted, if all you see is the material, and you say, well, this I think, you're only in touch with half of reality. And there are demonic spirits also. Yes. So that there are evil spirits that we have to be aware of. And there are angelic spirits that are here. And many children especially see them. And every child that I've ever met who sees angels sees them to be about 9 foot tall. They're huge, and they have such a tremendous influence in our lives. Angelic spirits have just so much to do with how we conduct our lives and who we are. They're so beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah. I think after Mass sometime, when we say, Holy, 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 Lord God of hosts, heaven and earth are full of your glory. Hosanna in the highest. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest. All of the angelic power that is around us. That is, there's so much in our faith that helps us and that can help us, especially in time growing old. Don't you find yourself
I
so much more
feel that the world is so full of challenges, but through sacraments and through our angels and our saints and through you are Jesus. You say it. You were aware of it at such a young age. I know that.
When I was a little boy, I used to live next door to a kid whose father was a contractor. And he said to me, my dad made that house. And he was very serious about it. And I said, my dad made that mountain. My father was always God. My dad made the chestnut tree.
Yes.
My dad did this. My dad made the cloud. He was my Abba.
Abba.
God was always my father.
Yeah.
That's from my time I was just little. I always wanted to be a priest. I remember, ever since I was 3 years old, what are you going to be? This lady said. She was a friend of my mother's. She lived across the street from us. Her name was Eleanor Novak. She said, and she started laughing when I said I wanted to be a priest. So I thought, I'm not telling anybody. If they want to know, that's what I want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I always wanted to be. Wanted to be that from 3 years old, ever since I was a little boy.
The Lord says, Jeremiah, before I formed you in the womb, yeah. I knew you. Before you came forth, I called you my own. And I know that about you. He called you.
Yeah.
He called you. And you've listened. and you served, you know, I look back at your priesthood and I know you served in Peru. I remember Lebanon.
Yeah.
I remember I was so afraid for you when you would talk about Lebanon. I didn't want you to go back. I loved you and I was afraid, but I know they needed you. And you know, Monsignor, somebody said to me about fear that I have, and they said fear and faith don't coincide. And I said, yes, they do. It's just who do you let win? And I learned that from you because you talked a long time ago about an experience in Beirut in Lebanon, and you were on a bus, and I think they had the Christians get off the bus, but it was just for the Christians to stand, and you were so humble when you told us that story. Like you were just like, well, maybe I didn't hear them, but you stood, and you know they just put you off the bus. But I know one of your brother priests was killed in Lebanon.
Yes.
I remember that.
Nicholas Cluthers. He was a martyr.
He was a martyr.
He was very wonderful. He was a young Jesuit. He was about 40 years old, and late 30s, early 40s. And he came from Delft, Holland. It's called to identify. They had put a tourniquet around his neck, and they pulled out all his fingers. The electric shocked his foot, his groin.
I remember.
And they put a tourniquet around his neck and threw it around. I thought, what was he thinking? These people who he has come to serve.
They tortured your friend.
Nicholas.
I remember the wound that you carried in your heart.
I went to see his mother after she was from Delft. When I went to see her, she said, please pray for me that I won't go spill. We need people who forgive.
I guess I wonder, how do we forgive? How do we forgive something so horrible?
Through him, he forgave, then we can forgive. It's through him and with him and in him. There's only one who forgives, and that's Jesus. He's in us. He forgives. I can't. I can't. He can.
He can.
I let him do it.
Yeah. I never forgot when you shared that with me. I never forgot that, priest.
Nicholas Cluthers. They just started his cause for canonization.
Did they?
Just recently, yeah. And I declare he will be a saint.
I believe you are a saint. I do. I believe you are a saint. You know, Monsignor, our friendship started, I remember you worked with a Protestant minister. His name was Paul.
Paul Gear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, that was just so unusual to see a Catholic priest and a Protestant minister, and the two of you were so close.
Yeah.
And the Rap House up there on Mulberry Street.
Yeah.
And Hilltop and Valley View.
Yeah.
You serve the poor in our area, the prison ministry.
When I come back from Lebanon, I had met Mother Teresa there.
Yes.
And she said to me, "You shouldn't be working with the poor." I said, "What?" She said, "No, you shouldn't be working with the poor." She said, "You should be working with priests. Don't you know that priests are the poorest of the poor?" And it was right about that time that pedophilia and that stuff started to come up. And that's the first time I said, "Great. I think what I'll do," she wanted me just to help her start missionaries of charity for her community. Missionaries of charity, priests.
Oh, okay.
And we went down to Tijuana, and I started for them in teaching them the same thing about God's love and the poorest of the poor and how to care for them. Yeah. And it was in Spanish, and I had learned Spanish. I had just come back from Lebanon, and I knew Arabic and I knew Spanish.
She was a great influence
Good.
on your life and your ministry. And
that's when I shifted and I concentrated on working with priests.
But do you remember, I think it was Valley View, and you were doing so many beautiful Lenten services, and people just indifferent. And on Palm Sunday, there was a donkey, and from Naog, right?
Yeah.
And how did you get to borrow the donkey? You got the mayor to agree or something?
I got a donkey, because that's what Jesus rode on.
Right.
And we built. We had a beautiful. We chopped up the wood of it. But we had a big cross.
Yes.
We set it on fire. And that was on Holy Saturday. And then Easter Sunday, we went through the resurrection.
Yes.
And I got the donkey.
You had the donkey, and I remember because it made the newspaper and everything.
I
You
rode
were
the donkey.
unusual.
I rode the donkey from Hilltop over the Valley View.
From Hilltop to Valley View, that's correct. That's what, now I remember, because I was trying to think, was it Hilltop or Valley View? You rode the donkey. But
That was exciting.
you were
That whole
Jesus to
community,
them, everybody and everybody. But I can remember too, that Lent being so special to me.
Yeah.
Because okay, the people were coming into the church, but then the church,
Hail to the King.
hail to the King, and we had our palms, and I was there, and Sim, and Cookie, and Noni. I remember somebody, and Paul, and I remember that beautiful Lent, and that's what the church is. We're called to not be the building, be the church.
We had beautiful musicians that, you know, they had their guitars, different things. Yeah. Exciting times.
Your prison ministry was beautiful.
Yeah.
Father John, one of the things that you talk now about is the evil spirits, and you alluded to that a little while ago. You know, we talk so much about the love of God and the goodness and the forgiveness of God that sometimes we need to hear of our sinful nature or demonic natures that they're there. And you encountered that, I believe, at one time in your life where you felt fear. And you learned, or did you learn exorcism, or it just came to you?
Demons, they're not just meant to be fought. You know, Jesus did not just drive out demons, but he did other things. He healed the sick, healed the blind, and I would like to do other things, but part of the life of Jesus is to drive out demons.
Yes.
And not to be afraid of anything. I started a school for exorcism. I don't know if you know.
Right.
At one time, I was one of 13 exorcists in the country. And the Bishop of Phoenix, Arizona, called me and he said, "Would you come to Arizona and do some exorcisms?" I said, "Why did you have to call me?" He said, "Because you're one of 13 exorcists in the country. Every diocese should have an exorcist. Every diocese." So when I heard that, I said to the bishop, I said, I think that's where you're lax. The church hasn't said a thing about driving out demons for 50 years. It's the Protestants that have been talking about exorcism. So, you know, if the church doesn't teach, well, then the Protestants are going to fill in where the church doesn't. And thank God for that. But they were the ones who had the exorcists. And so what I started doing then was I started a school in Chicago that I began teaching exorcism and what to do with demons and how to drive out demons and what prayers especially to say. And we got some of the best exorcists in the country then to come and teach at our school. And they taught there. Father Dennis McManus, Father Rippinger, and you know, we gave courses, and it was, you know, I taught there, and I was the president of the board. And first year we had 50 exorcists, 55, 60, and then I resigned when I was 90.
That was time. Don't you think, though, that we should all, not to be exorcists, but like learn how to put the evil spirits out of our lives, our homes, our relationships?
I think every Catholic should know the value of the cross and what that does with an evil spirit. What an evil spirit experiences when he sees the cross, or when he hears and experiences the sign of the cross, or what this will do when we, and the other thing is not to let a home go without holy water. It's so powerful that the holy water is so powerful, and when you know it's like it's searing to the devil.
Wow.
Drives him. And if we would know that, and if we would know, for instance, the breastplate of St. Patrick, that why was it so powerful for St. Patrick to drive all the snakes out of Ireland? Because he did. And he was one of the most wonderful bishops.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Being Irish.
Well, yeah, it's powerful.
Yeah.
And we will all have that same power if we stay with our faith.
Yeah, I think you're right that we need to arm ourselves with an awareness of evil spirits and knowing that, you know, I wear my Blessed Mother, you know, she protects, she's a mother, she's my mother, and the cross, you know, bear that cross and you say to the Lord, my refuge, my rock, in whom I trust,
and I will
raise you up, on eagle's wings, bear you on
the breath of dawn, make you to shine
like the sun,
and hold you
in the palm
of
his hand. Thank you. My memories of you are cherished gifts, everyone. I remember coming to you from West Virginia after they told me to terminate my own pregnancy. I had been exposed to German measles twice, and I remember you blessed my son while still in the womb. And the grace of your blessing, the courage, gave me peace. Not that I would ever have destroyed his life, but I feared. And then your blessing gave me peace. You know, I know that Mother Teresa of Calcutta was such an influence on your ministry. And of course, you know my ministry is defense of the unborn, the sacredness of every life, from the womb to the tomb. But can you say something about abortion and what it does to all of us?
When I was in Calcutta with Mother, a woman came in. She had given birth. The baby had 2 heads. And this lady was a Muslim, she said, "Mother, would you take this baby?" She said, "I'm afraid to go home, and my husband would say that you gave birth to this ugly thing." And she said, I don't know what to do with this. So it was a living baby, and it was a girl.
Mm-hmm.
So the woman handed Mother the baby, then eventually went off. And we were there together. And so my mother had just died. It was 1987. And I was sitting next to Mother. Mother was saying, Mother Teresa was saying, "Why don't you baptize the baby?" And I was sitting there with the child, and I was with the water. And I said, "What name should I give the baby?" She said, "Why don't you give your mother's name?"
You gave the
So I baptized Sister. But Mother, would you take this?
You talked about your sister to me when I was so young, and her love for you.
Very soon after I was ordained, I had a heart attack. And my younger sister was then at home. And my parents came to see me. And the doctor said he could die. I didn't know this was going on. And when my little sister heard that he could die, I didn't know what she did. I very soon after that, I think it was just a matter of a month or two, I had that heart attack and I got well. Now that's over 60 years ago. I've never had a problem with my heart since. But very shortly after, my sister developed a lump on her neck. And I came home and my mother said, "There's something wrong with your sister." And she showed me her picture and she showed it to my father. And sure enough, when Maryann came home, she had this lump. So she went to the hospital, she went to the doctors locally, and the doctor said, "I don't know what that is. You should take her to Philadelphia." And the University of Pennsylvania is very advanced in medicine, and there she was diagnosed to have Hodgkin's disease. And the doctor told my father that that's what she had, there's no treatment for it, and that she would be dead in 3 years. My dad, our family was not good at death and dying. No, very, very bad. My dad, who had this news, said, "I can't see myself worrying my wife for all these years." So he didn't tell my mother. He said, "I can't see myself telling anyone else." And he didn't. He didn't even tell me. The only treatment were transfusions once in a while, and I would know that my sister would get a transfusion, but it just escaped me to know. I would come home and maybe once in a while she'd have a transfusion, but I never thought much about it. But she was going through high school, you know how girls are, and she was so pretty. She was the prettiest little girl. And as young girls, she would fall in and out of love a lot of times. So I would come home and she'd say, "Oh, you should meet Charlie." And I'd say, "Well, what about him?" "Oh, he's the sweetest thing." So I'd come home 2 weeks later, "How's Charlie?" "He's a creep." So she'd fall in and out of love with a lot of guys, and then the years went on, and time went on. And I didn't realize that she only had the 3 years to live. Didn't think about that, just time went. And my dad was carrying this burden. When she was now 18, and she was very, very sick, and it was like the last time that he could tell me, he came to me and he said, "John, your sister's dying." What? Yeah, your sister's dying. And she needs you to help her because she may or may not last for another week or when you come back again. So I want you to prepare her for her death. And then he told me what the disease was and that there was no further treatment that they could give her. And they weren't going to give her any more transfusions. It just happened that she said to me, she said, "John, I've fallen in love with this young boy," and he was really a nice kid. He was from Pittsburgh. She said, "Will you marry us after I graduate?" I said, "Maryann, I can't marry you." She said, "What do you mean?" I said, "You're going to die." She screamed, crying. I cried. I told her, I said, "You only have a short time, and you may or may not be living. And by the time I get back, I really should be hearing your confession. I should be anointing you, and I want to, and I should be giving you the last rites of the church to prepare you." It was a great time for a lot of tears. I still think of how that really struck her there. Anyway, we cried. I cried. I heard her confession. I gave her the anointing of the sick. I gave her the last rites of the church. And I went back to my parish. And I knew she was going to be okay. Because she was Jesus. But I didn't know how deeply she was Jesus. Yeah, I really didn't. Because I came home on her birthday. Her birthday was June the 24th. And she was 18 years old. And she was there beneath the cross of Jesus. She couldn't go upstairs anymore. She was there laying on the couch. And she said, "Would you sit by me?" I said, "Yes, I'll sit by you." She said, "Do you remember when you had your heart attack?" Oh, I said, "Yes, man, I do." She said, "Do you know what I did?" She said, "I went down to St. Anthony's Church when we came home, and I heard Dr. Coffell say you could die. So I looked up at the tabernacle, and I said to Jesus, 'Jesus, my brother, his life is very important. Mine isn't. Take my life and give him his.'" Now, I don't know if God does things that way. I don't know. God's ways are a mystery. But I do remember that she loved me so much, she would die for me. And I had told her that she was Jesus. So when you experience Jesus in another person, see, I know Jesus tells me in the scripture, I know Jesus tells me, "I love you and I would die for you." That's his words. But it came to me in a human person.
to my sister. When we have the experience of someone here, right here, who loves us enough to die for us, see, that's Jesus. So across my heart, there are those footprints of man, or whatever that is that's in me, changing me. See, a little girl who loves that way. Like if anyone sees this, to know that you're Jesus. You have a power. Everyone. You can be 15 and you can be Jesus. You can love like Jesus because you can love with Jesus' heart. You can see with Jesus' eyes. You can pray with Jesus. No wonder Mary comes to Lucia.
I always attributed my love for the prisoners to I remember it was a week after she died, and I remember getting up one morning and I thought, how long has it been since my sister died? And I thought, reflected on how many days it had been since I had remembered. How long it's been since I thought about her and prayed for her. And I remember a beautiful sister. And failed to go to prison. And from then on, I had this dream that I had been to visit Maya, and he was in prison, and I had been to see him, and I had been through the same thing as I had been to visit this one woman who was in jail. And I went through all the same things. They were hooting at me from the different places in the prison, and as I walked along, and as I went to see my sister, there's Maryann's brother. There's Maryann's brother. She hasn't seen him in so long. He hasn't been here. And then when I saw her, she just loved me, and she radiated such beauty. And she hugged me, and we had a beautiful visit. When I come out of the prison, I connected it with visiting the jails. And from then on, I never missed. For 13 years, I went to visit the jail every day.
Yeah. I remember
Yeah.
Zim and I went with you one time during Christmas, because I played the piano, and you asked me to go there. And I remember my mother was like, and you're going to a prison, or is this safe? And I'm like, I'll be with Father John. And you know, it's so funny because a generation later, when my daughter came home and told me she was going to go on a mission trip to Santo Rosito in Mexico, I was like, oh, I don't think that's safe. And who would you go with? And she said, well, Father John Esseff and Father Clark. And I was like, Father John is going to take you, you know. Yeah, you've influenced generations of my family, my children, my brothers and sisters, my mom before me. You're a great spiritual leader to our family. You have been a gift. You're priesthood, your presence, you are Jesus to me.
Thank you.
Thank you.